Tonight, we're taking a look into celebrities who were watched, followed, and hunted by strangers who believe with total conviction that obsession was the same thing as love. These cases didn't just make headlines. They rewrote the law. And one question we're going to keep circling back to, because none of these stories answer it clearly: what does it take for the system to finally see the danger before it's too late? Her name was Rebecca Schaeffer. She was 21 years old, and by the summer of 1989, her career was doing the same thing every young actor dreams about: taking off. She had landed a starring role on the CBS sitcom My Sister Sam. She'd modeled for magazines. She was preparing for a meeting that could have changed everything: a shot at a role in The Godfather Part 3 from Francis Ford Coppola himself. She was waiting for a courier that morning, a script hand-delivered to her door. That is what she expected to find when she answered the door, but it was something entirely different. 3 years earlier, and 900 miles away in Tucson, Arizona, a teenager named Robert John Bardo had seen her on television and decided she belonged to him. He wasn't a casual fan. He wrote her letters, dozens of them. He tried to get onto the set of her show and was turned away. He'd actually done this before, with a different target, a child peace activist named Samantha Smith, before her death in a plane crash years earlier. Bardo's pattern wasn't new. It was a pattern with a body count waiting to happen. At one point, Schaeffer's people sent Bardo an autographed photo, a routine kindness, the kind of thing that publicists do 100 times a week for 100 fans who mean nothing by it. For Bardo, it wasn't routine. It was confirmation in his mind. It meant that she knew him. It meant something between them was real. Schaeffer lived alone at her apartment, and as she was expecting the delivery of Coppola's script, she answered the door. Bardo presented her a manila envelope with a letter and autograph that she had previously sent him. And after a very short conversation, she asked him not to come to her home again. So he went to a nearby diner, had breakfast, and then he returned to her apartment an hour later. This time, Schaeffer answered the door wearing, quote, a black bathrobe and a cold look on her face, according to Bardo. At 10:15 a.m., Bardo pulled out a weapon and ended her life by shooting her at point-blank range in the chest. Neighbors quickly rushed to the scene, and when they found a dying Schaeffer, she collapsed on the ground, and according to Bardo, she kept repeating, why? She was rushed to the emergency room of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where she would be pronounced dead 30 minutes later. Some officers, including Chief Peter Ronstadt, arrested Bardo the day after the event, after motorists reported a man running through traffic on Interstate 10. He immediately confessed to the murder. Marcia Clark, who you may know as the lead prosecutor in the O.J. Simpson case, prosecuted the case against him. He was convicted on October 29, 1991, of first-degree aggravated murder in a bench trial and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As a result of this incident, federal law regarding the release of personal information through the DMV was changed. The Driver's Privacy Protection Act, which prevents the DMV from releasing private addresses, was enacted to the United States Congress in 1994. Her death also helped prompt the 1990 passing of America's first anti-stalking laws. Forgot to mention this earlier, but the way that Bardo had got Miss Schaeffer's address was by hiring a private investigator to get her address from the DMV. And before this happened, that was absolutely something that anyone could do. At the time of her death, Schaeffer was dating director Brad Silberling. Her death influenced his film Moonlight Mile, about a man's grief after his fiancée is murdered. To honor Schaeffer, Pam Dauber and other My Sister Sam co-stars, Joel Brooks, David Naughton, and Jenny O'Hara, reunited and filmed a public service announcement for the Center to Prevent Handgun Violence in support of the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, which was enacted in 1993. Schaefer's parents became gun control advocates following her death. Every state in the country now has an anti-stalking statute. Every one of them exists in some genealogical sense because of what happened on that doorstep in West Hollywood. She didn't just become a true crime case. She became case law. In some ways, the next case is the strangest one to include in this video about celebrity stalking, because the person whose life ended up in the crosshairs wasn't a celebrity. It was the President of the United States. John Hinckley Jr. was in his mid-20s, adrift when he became fixated on the 1976 film Taxi Driver, by some accounts, more than 15 times. He identified intensely with its main character, a violent, isolated loner named Travis Bickle, who tries to assassinate a presidential candidate, partly to impress a young woman he's fixated on. The actress who played that role, a 12-year-old at the time of the filming, was Jodie Foster. Hinckley didn't just admire the film. He began quite literally trying to live inside of it. When Foster enrolled at Yale University in the fall of 1980, Hinckley followed her to New Haven, Connecticut. He left notes at her dormitory. He called her. He told strangers in a local bar that he was her boyfriend. And she never returned his interest. By every account, she barely knew he existed as more than an unsettling presence. Rejected, Hinckley did something almost impossible to fully wrap your head around. He decided the way to earn her attention wasn't persistence, it was scale. He did, in his words, a historic deed. He briefly stalked President Jimmy Carter at campaign events, and when Carter lost re-election that November, Hinckley simply redirected his plan toward the man who just replaced him, President-elect Ronald Reagan. On the morning of March 30th, 1981, just 69 days into Reagan's presidency, Hinckley sat down and wrote one more letter to Jodie Foster. In it, he told her he might be killed in the attempt he was about to make. He wrote that he was doing all of this for her sake and asked her to look into her heart and give him a chance, quote, with his historical deed, end quote, to earn her love and respect. He mailed it, and then he took a taxi to the Washington Hilton. At 2:27 that afternoon, President Reagan exited the hotel after delivering a speech, walking towards his limousine through a crowd of reporters and photographers. Hinckley was waiting in that crowd. He fired 6 shots in 2 seconds. One bullet struck Reagan, a ricochet off the limousine that entered his chest and just missed his heart. Press Secretary James Brady was shot in the head and left permanently disabled. He would spend the rest of his life partially paralyzed, and his 2014 death was ultimately ruled a homicide by the coroner, tied directly back to that day. 2 other men, a police officer and a Secret Service agent, were also wounded. Reagan survived, of course, discharged from the hospital less than 2 weeks later, and Hinckley was tackled and arrested on the spot. At the trial in 82, Hinckley's defense didn't dispute that he pulled the trigger. They argued he was legally insane at the time, driven by a pathological fixation on Taxi Driver and on Jodie Foster that had completely overtaken his grip on reality. It worked. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity and committed, not to prison, but to a psychiatric hospital. The public reaction was immediate and furious. The verdict felt to a lot of Americans like a loophole, like a man who'd shot a sitting president in broad daylight on camera and was simply not going to face consequences in the way everyone expected. The backlash didn't fade. It became law. States across the country and Congress at the federal level tightened the standard. So far tonight, these cases end with laws that get stronger. A new statute, a tighter standard, a door that used to be open, closed for good. This next case breaks that pattern, and it might be the most important one in this entire video because it's recent. It's still shaping how stalking gets prosecuted right now in 2026, and because the outcome isn't the one that you'd expect. Coles Whalen was a rising singer-songwriter based in Denver. The kind of independent touring musician who plays small venues, opens for artists she grew up idolizing, and builds a following, one show at a time. In 2010, after she performed at a Denver Pride Festival, a man named Billy Raymond Counterman found her on Facebook and started sending her messages. At first, she did what most people would do. She ignored them. She didn't respond. Eventually, she blocked him. He made a new account and messaged her again. This went on and off again for years. By court estimate, Counterman sent Whalen messages numbering somewhere in the hundreds of thousands. By some estimates, close to 1 million, across multiple accounts over roughly 6 years. Every time she cut off one channel, he opened another. The content of those messages is what eventually put him in front of a jury. Some were unsettling in a quieter way. He told her he'd bring by tomatoes from his garden, told her that she looked stunning the night before, as if they knew each other. Others were much darker. Court records include lines like, "Staying in cyber life is going to kill you," and messages telling her bluntly to die. He referenced things that suggested he knew where she was, and he asked her in one message, entered into court record, what she feared, and told her he'd had tapped phone lines before. The effect on Whalen's life was total. Her bassist later said Whalen became too frightened to book shows because booking a show meant posting online where she'd be and when, and neither of them knew what Counterman actually even looked like. He could, in theory, have been standing in any crowd at any venue. Whalen started handing out his mugshot to bouncers and venue bookers, asking them to watch for him. Touring, which used to be the entire point of her career, became a source of dread instead of joy. Eventually, she went to police. Counterman was arrested and charged in Colorado under the state's stalking statute, the kind of law this entire video has been building towards, the kind that exists precisely because of cases like Rebecca Schaefer's. In 2017, Counterman was convicted and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. On paper, that should have been the end of this story. A stalking law worked exactly as intended. A pattern of terrifying, targeted behavior recognized and punished before anyone got hurt. But Counterman appealed. And his argument wasn't that he hadn't sent the messages. It was that the messages were speech protected, First Amendment speech, and that Colorado had never proven he understood his words could be taken as a threat. In his telling, and in his legal team's argument, he simply didn't process his own messages the way an ordinary, reasonable person would. The case climbed the appellate ladder. The Colorado Court of Appeals upheld the conviction. The Colorado Supreme Court declined to hear it. And then, in January 2023, the United States Supreme Court agreed to take up the case. The question in front of the 9 justices was narrow, technical, and enormous all at once. When prosecutors charge someone with making a true threat, the category of speech that do they have to prove the speaker actually understood subjectively that their words would have come across as threatening? Or is it enough that a reasonable person on the receiving end would understand it that way? Colorado's law, like most stalking laws in the country at the time, used the second standard, an objective one. If a reasonable person would read those messages as threatening, then it was enough. On June 27, 2023, the court ruled 7-2 in an opinion written by Justice Elena Kagan that this objective standard wasn't good enough. The First Amendment, the majority held, there requires something more, proof that the speaker consciously disregarded a substantial risk that their words would be taken as threatening violence. A subjective recklessness standard, not just would a reasonable person be afraid, but did this specific person know they might be causing that fear and send the messages anyway? Counterman's conviction was vacated. The case was sent back down. Now, and this matters, the court ruling didn't say stalking is legal. It didn't say Counterman's messages were fine. What it did was raise the bar prosecutors have to clear to convict someone under a true threats theory by requiring proof of what was going on inside the stalker's head. Colorado's own Attorney General, Phil Weiser, saw it different. In a statement after the ruling, he warned that the decision creates a loophole for were delusional and devious stalkers, and that it would make it more likely that victims of online threats, disproportionately women, would live in fear, believing there was little they could do to hold their stalkers accountable. Coles Whalen never asked to become a legal precedent. She just wanted to keep playing music without checking over her shoulder at every single show. Years after her stalker's original conviction, she found herself back in the spotlight for the exact same reason all over again. This time, watching the country's highest court debate whether the words that terrorized her for 6 years even counted as a threat in the eyes of the law. She's still touring, smaller rooms now, often invite only. She wrote a song about the whole ordeal called Stronger, but by her own account, something about performing changed permanently. The joy of it got tangled up, maybe for good, with the years she spent being afraid. So here's the question we'd like to leave you with, other than a neat conclusion. If it took a body on a doorstep to change the DMV's rules, a killer who was already inside the room, a bullet that traveled all the way to the President of the United States, and a working law that still got sent back for being too easy to enforce, then what's the hole nobody's looking at right now? And where will the next threat come from? And will we be able to catch it in time with the way the legal system is as it stands? Thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe for more deep dives like this and much more.